Welcome, everyone, to this PAVE Europe webinar on Europe's path to autonomous mobility. Now, for the panelists on this call, and perhaps many of you who have dialed in, our social media feeds are flooded with people taking a robotaxi. Of course, we all live in a certain AV bubble, but some who don't might be led to a state of FOMO, fear of missing out. And in fact, in a recent article, The Economist has clearly fallen into this trap, and it suggested that Europe is lagging somehow in this race to autonomous mobility. The article states that robotaxis are, quote, commonplace on the streets of ever more cities in Europe, in America and in China, just not in Europe. It suggests that this is a Sputnik moment of sorts for Europe. Now, commonplace, well, that's an extreme exaggeration. There are just about 4,000 robotaxis in the world, which is less than 0.0003% of vehicles on the street, less than a third of the number of Ferraris built last year. In fact, it's just a fraction of the number of buses in London. And the total number of commercial robotaxi rides ever done, well, that's less than a third of the number of rides Uber does in just one single day, let alone Lyft or Careem or Moya or Grab or all of the public transport operators who do many, many, many more trips. So to say that robotaxis are commonplace everywhere but Europe is more than a stretch. We are clearly still on page one of a very, very, very long book. But it really is an exciting one. It's a book that will have an amazing end to it with safe, accessible, ubiquitous, autonomous transport of people and goods all over the world. And the book has a lot of participation from the people on this webinar. So with that, I'm really thrilled to have joining me on this webinar, Jonas Vega, Senior Public Affairs Manager at Moya, Oliver Howes, International Regulatory Lead at OXA, Svetlana Druma, Project Lead for Autonomous Mobility at Deutsche Bahn Regio, and Ali Danisman, Chief Commercial Officer at Arastec. My name is Lucas Neckerman. I'm a researcher and advisor on automated mobility and a co-founder and board member of PAVE Europe. So let's get started. Jonas, The Economist suggests that few firms in Europe are anywhere near the front line of innovation. However, Moya is planning what may be the largest deployment of shared and pooled autonomous mobility in Europe. And I particularly note the term shared because it distinguishes you a lot from, of course, what we are seeing in particular in the US. So tell me about this approach and what makes it different from what we see in China and the US.
Sure. So Moya is a company of the Volkswagen Group. We were founded in 2016, always with the goal of developing autonomous mobility solutions. And the Volkswagen Group also decided that for cities, especially, we need different solutions than just adding more cars to the streets. So our solution was developed, and we developed a solution called ride pooling. Ride pooling first with drivers to learn how to operate electric fleets, and then as the next step, autonomous driving solutions. And we're on track to receive type approval for autonomous vehicles in Europe by 2027. And we always call it autonomous mobility the European way. Why? Because we believe that for Europe, the right approach is to work with experienced public transport operators that have the experience and the political backing in the cities, and develop autonomous mobility solutions that serve the common good. So shared mobility, where we can actually also serve public goals like reducing congestion, noise, pollution in cities. So this is our approach, and I think it also has regulatory reasons why we're a bit slower in Europe, but I think we will be a fast follower.
Super. You already alluded to some of the differences that we see to other approaches in other regions, and that's the very close collaboration with public transport authorities on the one hand, but also public transport operators which is a perfect transition to Svetlana. The EU is piloting autonomous vehicles both on scheduled routes and also in on-demand flexible services. Now, this would obviously be quite a disruption, frankly, even of your own services. So how can autonomy support and not threaten the future of public mobility in Europe's cities and countrysides?
Yes, thank you, Lucas. I think, yeah, autonomous driving is definitely not a threat. It's really a chance for us. So, I mean, if you think what is public transport at the moment, you first think of trains, you think of capable bus systems, but at the same time, what is needed and what's also needed already are on-demand, flexible shared vehicles, especially, of course, in rural areas or in suburban areas during nighttime, really connecting the people from the villages to the rail, to the bus, and also connecting people in rural areas from A to B. So at the same time, we of course are also facing a driver shortage, high operating costs. So autonomous driving is really a chance to overcome that. And I think it's important to understand it's not a new mode of transport. It's the way we deliver the service, deliver the mobility service, and it comes with many opportunities at the same time. So making public transport more attractive and helping maintain or even extend the service levels despite the driver shortage, and also, of course, reduce the operating cost for the public transport and allow staff to be used more efficiently or even create future-ready jobs for those people. And last but not least, really improving the road safety, of course, by reducing accidents that are today caused mainly by human drivers. So maybe to sum it up, autonomous driving really helps us to provide the service more efficiently, more safe, and also it provides us as a unique chance to really fundamentally rethink and even maybe reshape the public transport system, making it more attractive and more accessible at the same time.
I think that's such a key message here that is clearly coming out already from Jonas and Svetlana, that it is a partnership approach, and that holds absolutely true as well for you, Ali. Adastec runs full-sized electric autonomous buses across Europe and the US already. You have you told me you have 11 deployments: Göteborg, Paris, Rotterdam, in Switzerland. Could you share a little bit about lessons that you've gained from these deployments? What's it like to work with the public transport operators? And then maybe we'll get into some key questions on mass deployment as well.
With pleasure. Thank you very much, Lucas. At Adastec, as you have mentioned, we developed level 4 automated driving system for the public transit buses. And luckily, we have deployment since early 22 in different geographies, countries, and around the calendar year means we have faced all weather conditions in the seasonal conditions and road conditions that did help us to improve the quality of our product and made us faced with the new use cases in the area to make our ODD more enhanced and advanced. So while this first couple of years we did focus on the technical use cases to make the cases handled in the operation. Last 1 year we did focus on the approval process in different countries with the authorities. Then luckily, we have been approved in all of deployments to operate on public road in mixed traffic with the passengers. And our solution is not a self-driving vehicle in the street, but it is integrated, connected, part of public transport system with the PTOs. So technically we are almost there for the functional use cases. For non-functional use cases, we are improving day by day with the collaboration of the stakeholders and approving authorities to cover those issues. As Svetlana had mentioned, the PTOs are the most experienced stakeholders in the autonomous public transit systems, and they have experience since the availability of autonomous driving vehicles since then. So as a conclusion, we are at the moment providing total solution. It has been proved, it has been tested, it has been used. So now we are waiting for the mass production. We need one player, the OEMs, the big players, because for instance, in Germany, if Daimler Bus or MAN, they don't have the autonomous driving system, then you cannot explore the business. Same applies in France, Italy with Iveco, with the Scania and Volvo in other countries. So for mass production, we are in need of OEMs participation to be in the picture.
I think that's a really important point, and I know that in the course of this panel we are going to get into some of the hurdles that we still need to overcome for mass deployment, and having sufficient vehicle choice available is of course a big one, and we'll certainly get into that. Before we do, I'd like to bring Oliver into the conversation. Oxa is developing autonomous systems both in the UK and abroad. You have both shuttles and industrial applications on your agenda, perhaps slightly uniquely. So what's your take, Oliver? Are we leading, lagging, based on the deployments that you have? I think you would certainly argue that we're among the leaders here in Europe.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, so my name's Oliver, as was mentioned, and I work for Oxa, a UK-based autonomous vehicle software provider. And we really have a bold vision for autonomy. We have a vision where this software will enable any vehicle to be self-driving anywhere at any time. And this is what we call universal autonomy. This is our mission. This is where we're heading. But that's a huge mission, and we're not trying to tackle this all at once. And we're focusing initially, well, in the most commercially viable automated vehicle sectors, and also crucially where the world needs it most today. So with that in mind, we're focusing on industrial mobility automation. So what this means is it means automating the movement of vehicles that are doing repeat journeys or operating in a more constrained operating environment day after day after day. So on road, this could mean passenger shuttling. So it could be buses running along fixed routes. And as mentioned earlier, within Europe, there's more of a local authorities lean more towards shared passenger transport, those sort of services, rather than private hire vehicles. So industrial mobility automation also covers off-road environments as well. So in an off-road environment, this could be the movement of sort of heavy logistics like shipping containers around a port environment. It could be lighter logistics like moving baggage trolleys around an airport or in a warehouse environment. Or it could be an automated vehicle roaming an industrial site doing asset monitoring or security monitoring or something like that. Those very sort of repeat journeys in both that on-highway environment and off-highway. And yeah, so with the off-highway sort of focus in mind, there are many sort of automated opportunities that can impact everyone every day. So if we're automating the movement of shipping containers within ports, for example, that will have an impact on every person every day, just because all goods we have in our home or in our workplace have probably come on a ship or been flown, unless it's a product produced by that country alone. So just because we're not seeing these autonomous systems on our road, either in robotaxis or the shared mobility to the scale that you are in the US at the moment, that doesn't mean that autonomy is not playing a huge part in other areas that are just behind closed doors to the general public eye. So I think it's an unfair representation of where Europe is when we think about all uses of autonomy, especially where we think about applying autonomy in some of our most sort of crucial areas and some of the most sort of commercially viable areas as well.
Absolutely spot on, Oliver. I think that's a really, really important point to make here, that autonomy spans so much more than just robotaxi use cases. And of course, Ali also made the point that it's, the ODDs are challenging in many cases. Different weather conditions, different street conditions, and off-highway applications, Ali, as you do at Oslo ports and airports. Such critical things to our everyday life, but we don't necessarily see them. And places where European companies like yourselves are leading. In fact, look, Europe is the continent that invented cars. We invented the World Wide Web. We can lay claim to inventing the computer if you count Charles Babbage's difference engine. And of course, we invented learning machines. It was also the first place in the world that deployed autonomous shuttles anywhere in pilot projects. So we have quite a lot of claims to fame in this autonomous space, and the EU anyway has over $1.5 billion committed to autonomous projects through 2027, way surpassing the US government's AV outlay. Now in the US, of course, it's a little bit more VC funded. Some of that, of course, is coming our way to the UK and to Europe as well. Now, most investment is in public and focused on shared, scheduled, and public transport rather than robo-taxis in Europe. I think that's certainly true. But we will also, and that's just the nature of the geography, see the first cross-border robotaxi and shuttle projects in Europe, with in particular cities around Switzerland, not just piloting but deploying services. By 2026, 2027, we would expect. There's a number of major partnerships that have been announced on robo-taxi, robo-shuttle public transport deployments across the UK, across Germany, across other countries in Europe as well. So I think there's a lot that can be shared and a lot that can be learned as well from other regions. And in fact, that's part of what we do at PAVE Europe. And let me give a short plug for all of the people on the call. If you are not yet a member of PAVE Europe, do consider becoming a member of PAVE Europe. It is the Partners for Automated Vehicle Education. This is exactly the sort of thing that we do. We communicate and educate on the benefits of autonomous vehicle technology. And one of those key benefits is, of course, safety. Svetlana, you alluded to it earlier. Let's dig a little bit deeper on that. So how is Europe's approach to safety, to oversight, distinct, maybe also different from what we might know from other regions? What's the role that different levels of authorities play? Because of course we have the city level, we have the region, we have the national, and of course the pan-European level. Can you kind of wade through this and give us some insights on how this all leads to a safer deployment of autonomous mobility?
Yes, definitely, Lucas. I think, you are looking at different layers here. So, for example, if taking the layer of safety validation, compare Europe to the US, for example. I think in the US, the deployment of autonomous vehicles currently relies really heavily on manufacturer self-certification. So there is no nationwide federal framework given fully autonomous driving systems. So state governments have enacted their own legislation and regulations for testing and operations, leading to really a kind of patchwork of state-specific rules. So this form of self-certification also, of course, comes with a risk. So there is no standard that is given, and suppliers have to make sure that they kind of take all the precautions that are needed. In Europe, it's different, of course. So at least some countries like Germany or France, they have a national legal framework for fully automated driving. So, for example, looking at Germany, there is a specific legislation for level 4. So, there are different steps, as you know. So there's kind of the test approval first with the safety drivers. there's a type approval then for the vehicles, and in the end there is an operational area approval, really like after completing all these stages, a truly driverless operation is permitted. So it's totally different. So in Europe, you really have to demonstrate and to prove that the autonomous driving system can drive more safely than an average human, and you have to really prove that you are capable of it. So the targets are kind of set by the legislation and not a self-certification. And I mean, this framework, of course, applies to all the operators that are coming to Europe, coming to Germany, like you said in the introduction. So there are a lot of partnerships that are coming soon to Germany, especially. So I think that's the second layer you are addressing, the role of the city authorities. So, I mean, if you look at this approval process, the city authorities do not really play a role in that because it's done on federal level and on state level. But with the entry of robotaxis, we are also facing other impacts. I mean, all the announcements that we saw were announced for larger cities such as Munich, for example. So, and I mean, you said it, like the metropolitan areas in Europe, they have a well-developed, really widely used public transport network, and also very busy roads. So the robotaxis that are coming, I mean, there will be a great mobility option for the people in the cities in a short term. So the offerings will be attractive, of course, and there will be customers using it. However, I'm sure this is coming with some risks also at the same time, because in the long term, it will, of course, lead to increased traffic volumes on the streets. And also there will be customers who might be kind of changing from public transport and shift really to a robotaxi service, really jeopardizing the financial system stability of the public transport network. So there are also risks coming with it. And that's kind of the role of the public authorities or city authorities at the same time, because they have to kind of make sure that there is an attractive offering for the customers and make sure that it can be financed. So cities, I'm sure, really need to define really clear requirements for how these mobility offerings can be integrated. So an integration does not only mean to make it accessible via the booking app, but also in terms of transportation planning in the beginning and also the fare structures. It really needs with a full integration. So with that proper integration, the services can then benefit as many people as possible. And then the robotaxi providers on the one hand, and also the public transport operators will profit from that because it will be attractive to the overall society and kind of lead to a win-win situation for both parties.
I think what you really highlighted is the foresight that is going into this, to really think this through rather than deploy first. Robin Chase, the co-founder of Zipcar, once called it the utopia or the potential dystopia of autonomous mobility, depending on the choices that we make at the beginning. And I think the European approach here is to regulate first, then demonstrate, and then deploy at mass scale, whereas other countries have taken a different route, deploying at mass scale first, or at some scale first, and then figuring out the regulatory frameworks afterwards. And that perhaps isn't in keeping with the safety first approach that we do take, generally speaking, in Europe. Now, Ali, buses come under a different registration and certification framework than taxis, and perhaps also a much stricter one given the number of passengers. So can you tell me the sorts of things that you and your partner, Karzan, and others need to focus on when you get your vehicle street ready?
Sorry, as Svetlana had mentioned, the safety is one of the major issues to handle to make the autonomous driving system available commercially in the market. So at Avastec, we have made a strategic decision to go to collaborate with the OEM who has electric vehicle with type approval, homologation, and GSR compliancy to cover the OEM side of the requirements from the safety and cybersecurity conditions. And since our vehicle is big bus, so we have higher responsibility. If you are in a autonomous passenger car, it is your car, your risk. If you are in a robot taxi, it is still your risk. But in our vehicle, we are carrying 40, 50, 80 people, and they are citizens, and they are standing passengers, all these ladies with children, with bags. So the sustainability and comfort and quality of the driving should be at the highest level. To comply with that, we have designed a very much enhanced and advanced sensor suite. And we have KPIs, key performance indicators, SPIs, safety performance indicators, and CPIs, comfort performance indicators, because it is a public transportation bus with so many people in it. To make those happen, we have a very skilled and experienced safety team. And based on the requirements of the public transportation operators, we emphasize those with the standards and regulations. We use our holistic approach in the VIM model and create the data in mathematical and graphic format to submit for the validation and verification of the approval authorities. So once you process this with the combination of stakeholders, participation, acceptance, and guidance, then you have the safety compliancy covered in the operations. That's what we did in many European countries. Finally, in Netherlands with RDB, in Germany with KBA, which KBA's approval is a sign of status for the global market. We did it.
Amazing. I particularly liked the KPI, the SPI, and the CPI, and keeping that balance between not just economic performance, but safety and comfort considerations, as well as equal performance indicators. Thank you for that, Jonas. Let's talk a little bit about the timeline, because you announced the driver out just some months ago, but it's going to be a few more months until drivers are finally out of the vehicles. What's that process like? What's happening, and what's the key focus that you have before your fleet is able to roam the streets without a driver?
I would divide that into different sections. So first, of course, there's the type approval timeline for Europe, where we said we want to reach type approval by 2027 and take the driver out in Hamburg as the first city in Europe. We will have first fully driverless projects in the US by 2026, but that's a different market. So it's a very complex process in Europe, and you work very closely in Germany with the Federal Transport Authority to make that happen. And so that's the one side. But on the other side, it is not just about enabling an autonomous vehicle, it's also about developing a solution to operate large fleets. So what we're also working on is other parts of the MOIA ecosystem. This is how we call it, at least. So developing software solutions for fleet operations, passenger management, mobility analytics, third-party connectors, all these things you need to run large fleets. So that's something we're developing in parallel together with our partners. And we've already announced a project in Berlin, apart from Hamburg, and another European city will follow in the next months. So that's very important, but we're also developing solutions for so-called operator enablement, which means that we help operators to run our service. And that includes things like first responder trainings, but also how to run the service, how to set up the service, how to get spare parts, logistics, all these kinds of things you need to develop as well if you want to provide a tech solution to operators in Europe. So that's the main process we're working on right now. And the type approval process, of course, is apart from that. And another thing I just wanted to stress is that the good thing about the European regulation is that we really have a gold standard when it comes to approving these vehicles and showing their safety. And if once we reach that, we can take the standard, and that's what we learned from talks with other countries outside Europe, is that they really believe in the European regulation. And once you reach that standard from 2027 on, you have a market-ready product that can scale. So I think that's one of the benefits of having such a safety-focused framework.
I think that's a key message there. Thank you for that. Let's talk a little bit about the business model next. Something that I'm always keenly interested. Jonas, of course, Moya is a little bit more vertically integrated than some of the others, given that, of course, the parent company also produces vehicles. That's not always the case. Some integrate technology. Let me go over to Oliver on this one. You are focused very much on the technology, and you're deploying autonomy in a multitude of different ways, but also a multitude of different vehicle types. Is this an Okta special business model? Is this what differentiates Okta in this world?
Thanks, Lucas. And yes, I would say it's an Okta-specific business model. One of our key strategies to support the development of our products is what we call ACE. ACE stands for available, configurable, and explainable. And I'll explain each one of those briefly in turn. So available just means that the software that we're developing can be integrated on any vehicle platform. Configurable means that that software can be adapted and tweaked to make it specific to the vehicle platform it's going on to, and also the environment in which it is operating in. So that vehicle can become a local expert at a specific task at a specific point in time. And then also, very importantly, is the explainability side. So this is developing a software product that is both understandable and interpretable with all the decisions it's making. So with this sort of mentality of ACE, this does allow us to deploy our software on a wide range of different vehicle platforms. And as I touched on earlier, this really does support our mission, which is focused around universal autonomy, which is, integrating our vehicle on the correct vehicle platform, doing the correct job in the right environment. But as I mentioned earlier, that very broad sort of mission of universal autonomy, you need to bring some more focus to the business. So as I mentioned, we are sort of focused on some of the most commercially viable sectors at the moment, and very importantly, where the world needs autonomy. So for us, this looks like things like towing terminal tractors around a port environment, as I mentioned earlier, or around a manufacturing site. Or it could be a slightly smaller tug, pulling smaller trainers around a warehouse, delivering goods to a manufacturing line, for example, or a buggy capable of operating on a mixed terrain environment and operating in environments where it's potentially dangerous for humans to be in. So if you can remove the humans from that environment, you can increase the level of safety there in a different way than you may do on the public road, for example. So yes, that sort of strategy allows us to deploy the software on a range of different vehicle platforms. But we are focusing, as I mentioned earlier, on that industrial mobility automation landscape.
Now, in terms of the volume and companies like yours and also Ali's that focus on the technology side of things, obviously it would seem like it's more appealing to license to thousands and thousands, maybe tens of thousands of robotaxis, as opposed to, let's say, hundreds of dollies at airports and ports, or hundreds of buses. So Ali, let me turn to you for this one. How does that business model work then, given that Europe is so heavily focused on shared mobility, so heavily focused on public transport? It just means that effectively you're licensing to fewer vehicles because each vehicle is carrying 60, 80 people. Does does the volume of robotaxis not appeal to you, or is it just the challenge of integrating into buses that appeals more?
Lucas, as you have said, the public transit system is well organized, operated from the technology point of view, from the compliance point of view in Europe than all other countries. So it is a standard usage lifestyle in Europe. And at Adastec, our motto is, for public transit, it should be automated, shared, and connected. That business model, that motto should fit the business model of the public transportation operator, because they are the main stakeholder, provides this service to the community. So basically, the business model should be suitable for the public transportation operators. Since our vehicle is carrying 50, 80, 100, based on the size of the vehicle, passengers in the vehicle. So basically, the business model should fit the public transportation operator requirements and the community. At the moment, as Svetlana had mentioned, there is a driver shortage and driver cost, which is the major cost of the operation, and it varies from 45 to 70% from country to country, from the operator to operator as a PTO cost. So reducing by having autonomous driving system, reducing the driver numbers and dependency on the driver is an issue on PTO side. So we are providing that advantage to PTO, being less using the drivers, and also once they have autonomous driving system, they will be independent from the time. Around the clock, they can operate to any location by any means, because once you are a human dependent, then the logistic of the drivers is another issue to handle and to cost. So as a conclusion, also if we compare the ADS-driven vehicle with human-driven vehicle, based on analysis reports which we have already published, we save 8% on the rate. For a PTO who has hundreds, thousands of buses, this is a tremendous amount, because human, they have emotion, sudden acceleration, harsh brakes, which consumes the power. In ADS, it's not like that. You train the vehicle, whatever the ratio you set, it is operated by the system. So as a conclusion, saving on the cost of the driver side and making driving available for all the time, all around the globe, and saving on the energy side is an issue to be considered in the business model of PTO. That's what we provide them.
It's an important point that the business model extends not just to those who develop or deploy or operate or build autonomous vehicles and systems. It really extends to the public transport operators, or if it's shuttles and taxis, that's a big part of the market as well. I should note that my own consultancy has published a projection on autonomous mobility. We suggest there's about $550 billion annual revenue market in the next 10 years. But even just in this scenario, there's represents some 4 or 5 million vehicles deployed. Now, while that might sound like a big number, it's still just a pittance compared to the 1.5 billion vehicles that we have on our streets today. So I think OEMs, while there's plenty of talk of peak car, and maybe and in all likelihood we have hit it, there's still plenty of space there. And I'm going to turn to Jonas here, because the article that we're talking about today also suggests that going fully driverless would risk cannibalizing incumbent sales, as people might hire robotaxis rather than own their own wheels. In other words, no one would buy a Volkswagen because they can just ride in one. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, it's interesting to hear that kind of comment from The Economist in a way that we've been faced with this accusation from both sides. So when we joined or when we launched our service in 2019 in Hamburg, they were afraid that we would cannibalize public transport because of an on-demand solution in the city center. Then we became part of public transport and showed that even in city centers, you need a solution that can compete with the private car in terms of flexibility and comfort, and still does not cannibalize public transport. And on the other side now, there are calls that we might cannibalize private car use, and the only thing I can say to that, we have the full backing by the Volkswagen Group, and of course our solution in ride pooling passenger transport will also enable the automation of the wider automotive product portfolio. So after our solution, Class 8 trucks and also line buses will follow. And for example, MAN in the Volkswagen Group is working on such solutions. And then in the long term, we might also see solutions for individual cars. But I think the focus should be the next 5 years, and then we'll have to see. So the focus will be on passenger transport and also trucks and buses for now. So I don't see any problem with that for now. It's quite the opposite. It's a big new business model for the automotive industry, and very different from traditional business models than just selling cars, but also different than mobility solutions. But we always say that we're working on solutions in physical AI applications, which is a completely new field for the automotive industry.
Massive opportunity then. So a massive opportunity across a diversity of different applications, and it really speaks perhaps also to the strength of Europe, that we are such a diverse set of environments. Ali talked about the different weather and street conditions. Oliver talked a little bit about all of the different applications. Jonas, you said that even within your own group, it extends far beyond. And I'd like to go a little bit deeper into this patchwork of rules and urban environments, and what is it going to take, given that that also represents a challenge. We said it's an opportunity, but it's also a challenge. Let me turn to Svetlana on this one. In this patchwork of environments and rules and regulations, what is going to enable the breakthrough for autonomous driving in Europe and also by Europe?
Yeah, very good question. So, I mean, what do we have now? What's the current status? So we have many projects with a small number of vehicles with a test approval and no driverless operations at the moment in Europe. So what is really needed for kind of breakthrough of autonomous driving is we need type approved vehicles, of course, and we need few model regions, so specific regions in Europe to show how the technology is working, how the processes are working, to show the scaling phase with hundreds and up to thousands of vehicles to really prove that it's working. And to do that, of course, we need funding, national funding, European funding for those model regions, because the public transport operators, I mean, they lack the financial means to fund such projects. I think that's clear. So I think it's really important to have a clear commitment also from the political side to implement such level 4 operations in public transport. And if we have that, if we have those model regions, then we will have predictable demand for level 4 vehicles for the automotive industry, which is really important to really kind of have a signal for them. And this will, of course, by time reduce the costs for the vehicles and also for the operational costs due to the experience we are gathering, due to economies of scale. And of course, this would lead to effective and efficient use of available public funds that are limited, of course. So, and of course, last but not least, it will allow the people to experience the technology and really get the benefit out of it.
Let me just drill down a little bit deeper into that one, Svetlana, because you talked about model regions. Now, over the last decade, we've had over 100 different pilot projects on autonomous mobility all across Europe. And I think, frankly speaking, most of us are sick of the word pilot project and would really like to steer towards mass deployment of fleet sizes in the hundreds and the thousands. So how is a model region different from a pilot deployment?
Yes, I think the most important thing is the size of the fleet, of course. So really talking about of hundreds or thousands of vehicles. And the other thing is really focus on specific regions. So, I mean, at the moment, everyone wants kind of to participate in this whole field of autonomous driving. And I think it's important really to have really focused funding for a few regions. So not too many, really just a couple of regions within Europe who can really show that it works, and then the afterwards can follow very fast. But I think that's really important to have this focused and really high number of vehicles in the different model regions.
Thank you. Now, we have to balance this conversation about the different regions that have already shown to be very strong in deployment. And there's, of course, what we've seen in the US, but there's also a lot of technology that's being developed and deployed in China, or I should say more broadly Asia. Of course, in Europe, we have the opportunity to fully embrace the technology from both sides, the West and the East. And perhaps I turn to Ali, because you sit at the border of Europe and Asia, and we're looking to you now. How does the openness that we have in Europe allow us to maybe leapfrog some others who may be more restricted in deploying technology for one region or another?
Thank you very much, Lucas. That was a very interesting question. First of all, we have a safety team, very closely following the updates of EU ADS regulations for European countries and NHTSA's updates for the US states. So we are parallelly processing in both continents, and basically in US it is more moderate than in Europe. In Europe, the definition, expectation, requirements are very strictly defined to be compliant. In US, it mostly depends on your commitment to them. But basically in our vehicle, we provide them the data, the driving experience to guide their regulations, to assist their parameters to be settled. So we are able to see European side and the US side. In Europe, mostly the morely focused on the safety and technology and operational requirement. So luckily we have deployments in so many different countries, and that gives us more experience, more criticizing of the standards based on the culture of the country, habits of the country. So even though we are talking about a standard, but it varies from country to country, from the operator to operator, from the authority to authority. We are lucky, as you have mentioned, we have these experiences to share with others to make the decisions more standardized. Because if any item, any criteria on the standard, we say in the United States, they say 4.3. In Germany, they say 4.5. We declare them. Then we believe that soon, with that collaboration, of course, with the others' collaboration also, the standards will be more compact in all regions.
If I can just build on that and also incorporate a question from one of our attendees. The technology is obviously advancing very, very quickly, and creating regulatory frameworks on the basis of one set or one assumed set of technology would seem to be limiting. How flexible do the regulations need to be, and how flexible have you seen Europe to be in creating regulations that adapt to quickly evolving technology?
In Europe, most of the regulatory bodies and approving authorities are very much focused on the regulations improvements, because in Europe, as we have mentioned, public transit is used and it needs improvement. So fully focus is there. And now it is not only the technology part, as all of us, we know, autonomous driving system is in evolution, and we need some more years to reach the ultimate goal of taking driver away and making autonomous driving system end-to-end digital. So to achieve this target, we need some improvement on OEM side. We need some improvement on technology side. We need some, let's say, mitigations and new regulations on public transportation operator side, because PTOs they are operating the public transit since decades based on the human-driven operations. So now they will switch to the autonomous driving system, and 1 bus, 2 bus, 5 bus, and scaling up. Gradually, they have their infrastructure, depot system, cleaning system, charging system, all based on human-driven system. So once we have automated driving system handled on the road, then PTOs will focus on the depots having autonomous charging system, whether pantographic or inductive or robotic. They will make a decision. Then the cleaning and the other service and maintenance issues. So to make these regulations to final stage, all of us, we will collaborate with each other, and we will reach to the end-to-end digital autonomous driving system in coming years.
Super. So flexible, adaptive, and yet varied. We need to start to get to the bottom line here of our webinar. Oliver, with everything that we've shared today, with all of the initiatives that are ongoing, the regulatory flexibility, but also the gold standard that we're setting, does this galvanize European action on autonomy? Are we going fast enough? Can we go even faster? What's your...
Yeah, thanks, Lucas. And sort of touching on what I mentioned earlier, we should, as an industry, we should be really focusing on designing and building automated systems which are grounded in real operational needs. We shouldn't be developing solutions looking for a problem, essentially. We should be understanding the needs and challenges of specific industries and developing solutions that fix those. So with this in mind, I believe the AV industry should be really working with industry-specific working groups, engaging with specific industry representatives at a detailed level to understand their need and to work out if autonomy can address their true needs that they have in the area they're working. So I think that very much comes to this conversation we had earlier about Europe and more leaning towards shared mobility solutions, because that's the sort of need that those countries have in a transport network. Or thinking about the movement of shipping containers in a port, really digging down into what are the challenges that port operator is having and how autonomy can actually solve that problem that they are currently having. And this will really create the best future for autonomy, developing business models that are really impactful, both economically and add so much value to society. So I think while robotaxis grab headlines because it's sort of like a cool application of the technology, it's not the only use of autonomous vehicles. And we could be focusing on what's mentioned earlier, addressing driver shortages in our logistics industry, which disrupt our supply chains, or addressing driver shortages and high operating costs in a public transport service, or automating those repetitive tasks where vehicles are being driven in dangerous environments. So that's not to completely disregard robotaxis. I think there's very much a place for robotaxis in our world and to add to our overall sort of transport solution. But Yeah, there are many other
But there's
applications.
there's a diversity of applications, and I think you're absolutely right, Oliver. Look, there is a key need for robotaxis where there is no pedestrian infrastructure, no reliable public transport, as is the case in most U.S. cities, no notable regional train service, little cycling infrastructure. Those are things that we've solved for actually pretty well across Europe. And that also means that this diversity of different transport modes that we have gives us a greater opportunity to create autonomous solutions for small, medium, large, extra large types of vehicles, not just robotaxis and shuttles. And every one of you has spoken to that. Some final words maybe from you, Svetlana, in 60 seconds or less. Do you think autonomy will become dominant across all modes of transport in your?
Yes, definitely. I mean, road-based mobility, definitely. So we see already at the moment different vehicle sizes being tested. So also larger buses are coming. I mean, they will be available probably after 2030, but it's coming. So, and I'm sure that we'll see automation in all modes. Also trains, we have it for suburban trains in some cities already. So I think, yeah, there are exciting times ahead for all of us, for road-based mobility, for rail-based mobility, and automation is definitely something that will play a role during the next years or decades.
Thank you. Ali, final thoughts from you?
Yeah. In Europe, autonomous driving system will be operational earlier than in most of the other continents. So that is for sure that to make this happen, we need collaboration of all stakeholders, PTOs, OEMs, universities, research institutes, approval authorities, plus most important, as Svetlana had mentioned, we need funding in the starting stage. It is not feasible for the public transportation operators to have full commercial responsibilities, including the others cost also. So in that sense, we need federal funding, we need central funding, municipal funding, EU fundings, more projects. As many as projects we have in the different use cases, different operations, we have more experience. It will help our total solution to be more convenient, more safe, secure, sustainable, used by the citizens.
Thank you, Ali. And final words, Jonas.
Yes, I think in Europe we might be a bit slower in first deploying the vehicles, but we have a great chance of developing solutions that are really scalable and that serve the common good and are not an end to themselves. So I think that's the big chance we have, and I believe that we can become frontrunners again.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all of the panelists, Jonas, Ali, Svetlana, Oliver. Thank you for all of those who have joined us today. I trust you will have seen that Europe is taking a different approach to automation, a much more diverse, a varied approach across multiple modes of transport, multiple regions, multiple deployments and ODDs. So just perhaps because we are creating a gold standard, we're not lagging at all, but we are leading in autonomous mobility. If you want to share this webinar with others, it will be available as a recording. Thank you so much for joining us today. And on behalf of PAVE Europe, have a wonderful day. Take care.